Okay, so the video should be recording. This PowerPoint is already available on the GT website. If you go to www.uisd.net, you will be able to see the departments on the bar and scroll down to the gifted and talented department. Okay, so just a thumbs up if you can see my screen with the PowerPoint. Thank you so much. When we talk about depth and complexity, the 8 elements of depth help the teacher facilitate learning within a discipline at differing levels of sophistication. You know, this allows teachers to go more in depth with the students. And then when we refer to complexity, we're basically referring to 3 of the elements that help facilitate learning by focusing on the relationship between and across various disciplines. And disciplines you can think of as the different subjects that the students study in school. Cuando hablamos de análisis de complejidad, hay 8 elementos de análisis que ayudan al maestro a facilitar el aprendizaje dentro de una disciplina en diferentes niveles de sofisticación. Y la complejidad consiste de 3 elementos para ayudar a facilitar el aprendizaje, centrándose en la relación entre y a través de diversas disciplinas. And these are the depth and complexity prompts. When you see the words, there are things like language of the discipline, which refers to specialized vocabulary and tools of the disciplinarian. So if the student is studying something through the lens of, let's say, a zoologist, so there are words that are particular and tools that are particular to the zoologist. So it's not as simple as to say it's just basic vocabulary words. They're language of the discipline that are specific to each discipline. And then we also want students to be able to identify details, attributes, parts, and factors. Patterns, it's very important that our students can look at information or study a topic and be able to distinguish patterns. As a matter of fact, patterns comes into play with the test that we administer to the students to qualify for the GT program. They're looking for patterns in shapes, reasoning by analogy, serial reasoning, and trends as well. We want them to be able to recognize and notice and analyze trends that they see in the various topics that they study. Unanswered questions relates to any areas of ambiguity where something is still not yet understood. And then rules, you can think of rules applying in different disciplines, right? There are rules in a system of government and social studies. There are rules in grammar and syntax in the study of English language arts. And big ideas, we want the students to be able to synthesize information and be able to articulate what are the big ideas based on what they're learning. And then of course, ethics. Gifted and talented students very often love to debate issues. They're interested in ethics, looking at whether things are right or wrong. And sometimes right or wrong is a little bit of an oversimplification, but what are the ethical issues and how do they affect people? So those are the elements of depth. Cuando los alumnos en sus estudios queremos que tengan un entendimiento profundo del lenguaje de la disciplina, detalles, patrones, tendencias, preguntas sin respuestas, reglas, ideas grandiosas y éticas. And these next 2 slides have a nice, concise depiction of the elements of depth and complexity, where you have the icon, which looks like a little picture, and then the prompt, which are the words, and then a description and a sample question. And this is available in PDF format on Gifted Guild. You can see the little URL on the bottom, giftedguild.com. So if you're interested in exploring that or downloading it, it is available there. So I'm going to shift over to the second page. Multiple perspectives. I want to focus a little bit on multiple perspectives. This is really important because it takes students looking at things from different lenses, broader, asking them to consider a topic from different points of view, including specific people who groups of people, plants, animals, or even inanimate objects. So I can think of a weekly activity that we had last year for our kinder students where the students were reading The Tale of Peter Rabbit. And so their gifted extension was to look at the story through the eyes of Peter Rabbit, because typically Peter Rabbit is portrayed as a very bad bunny because he did not listen and he went into Mr. McGregor's garden and he got into trouble. But we want them to consider multiple points of view. So we wanted the students to illustrate in writing or in pictures from the point of view of Peter Rabbit, the story, right? Why did he do that? Another example of a gifted activity is to invent an alternate ending for a story, right? When they read a story, we want them to be creative and inventive and perhaps be able to come up with a different ending. So those are some examples that you might see your children working on in school. And then here there's a question, contrast a teacher, a principal, and a student's perspective on a new school rule. What is unique to each person's point of view? And this can apply to all content areas. Also trends, there's something here that's very relevant at this time. How is a topic currently changing and what forces are causing those changes? For example, how is a rise in screen time affecting students' emotional health? Right? So there might be a discussion there about how that has affected our children and perhaps trying to balance that with some playtime outside in the sun, because that is something that's very healthy for our children. Este es unas dos páginas con un resumen de información de los elementos de profundidad y complejidad, y puede ver varios ejemplos. Quizás yo puedo pedir que me traduzcan este documento y lo puedo poner en nuestra página de internet para que también los padres de familia, si lo quieren, lo pueden tener en español. Pero si ven este ejemplo que tiene los lentes, este es un ejemplo de cuando queremos que los alumnos vean algún tema en diferentes maneras, ¿verdad? Diferentes puntos de vista. Por ejemplo, la historia del conejito de Peter Rabbit, muchas veces lo ven como conejito malo que no hizo caso y se metió al jardín del señor McGregor y fue un problema, ¿verdad? Pero podemos pedirles a los alumnos que lo vean de la perspectiva del conejito de Peter, ¿verdad? Cómo se sentía él y por qué hizo lo que hizo, ¿verdad? These are some instructional approaches that the teachers could take. Sometimes teachers will teach in a deductive fashion where the students analyze information from general to specific. And then they could also flip that around and use an inductive approach where beginning with specifics and facts, and then the children are asked to think about it, look for patterns, synthesize that information, and then come up with a big idea or a generalization. So just in the chat briefly, what do you think is less common? Which approach do you think is less common in school? So do you think that deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning is less common?
Inductive.
Which one?
Inductive.
Inductive. Okay. Yes, I would agree with that. I think it's far less common to see inductive lessons, but they can be really fun because you can present the student with different things. For example, you can present them with a set of facts and details, and then they have to look at those facts and details and put them in a certain order, and then figure out, well, what is the big idea here? What is this telling me, right? And so that can be done in math. It can be done in social studies. There's an example that comes to mind where it's the order of in social studies, the structure of a government, and then with a bunch of facts, the students have to place them how they fall, like with all the facts and then the big idea at the end. So it's really interesting. It can be a little bit harder. but it's fun if you give it a try. If we have any teachers here to try and design some of those inductive lessons where the students have to come up with that big idea at the end. The one that's more common is the deductive, where you begin with a big idea and then support that with facts. Okay, so thank you for participating, those who participated in the chat. I do see a quick question here. If a student is transferred to a new school, will we need to reapply for GT or will it move over to the new school? So I'll go ahead and address that question. If it is within UISD, from one UISD school to another UISD school, the student is already identified as GT and that travels with them. So it's just a matter of making sure, you know, you can remind the counselor that that he or she is a GT identified student, but he or she will be coded in our system. If it's a student from out of district, then we will need the documentation from the previous school district. All right, so I'm going to go on. En español, hay diferentes maneras de enseñar, de aprendizaje, y uno es deductivo, donde los alumnos analizan información de lo general a lo específico, y el inductivo, donde el pensamiento lógico de lo particular va a lo general, ¿verdad? Y estamos hablando de a cuál es el menos común, ¿verdad? Y hablamos que el menos común es el inductivo, porque es un poquito diferente, pero puede ser muy interesante cuando los alumnos vean información específica y luego ellos mismos pueden pensar de una idea grandiosa. Okay, I see a question in the chat. Is there a sign-in for this meeting? No, we'll be able to gather that information on the back end, so don't worry about the sign-in. So when we add complexity to the curriculum, we're looking at the prompts over time. How have things changed over time? How has a character changed over time? Looking at different points of view. We already kind of talked about that one. And then interdisciplinary relationships or connections. La adición de complejidad en el plan de estudio, tenemos transcurso del tiempo, cómo cambian las cosas o los personajes, puntos de vista diferentes y relaciones interdisciplinarias, ¿verdad? Cómo se relaciona la matemática con las ciencias. Ese es un ejemplo de interdisciplinaria. These are our UISD broad-based themes, and the idea here is that the students will get a global understanding of the grade level theme, right? So we just started providing services to our kinder students, kinder teachers. We had a meeting, we had a professional learning community meeting, and we got together and discussed some of the resources for providing the services to kinder. So the teachers should be introducing the grade level theme of beginnings. First grade, we have changes, second grade structures, third grade is order, fourth grade is patterns, fifth is systems, sixth is discovery, seventh is communication, eighth is influences, ninth forces, 10th relationships, 11th conflict, and 12th power. Now, these broad-based themes are going to also overlap in the grade levels depending on what the students are studying and what's relevant, but we do want our educators to make an effort to touch on this grade level theme throughout the year. Okay. Estas son las temas generales en nuestro distrito para que los alumnos tengan una idea de estos temas. En el kinder tenemos inicios, primero es cambios, segunda es estructuras, tercera es orden, 4 es patrones, 5 sistemas, 6 descubrimientos, 7 comunicación, 8 influencias, 9 fuerzas, 10 relaciones, 11 conflicto y 12 poder. And you're going to see how some of these come into play with the examples of student projects that I'm going to be sharing with you. Okay. So we want the students to be able to articulate those big ideas, those generalizations, and you can see some examples here. It's an insight. You know, for example, all things begin from a source, change is necessary for survival, influence can be positive or negative, power can create or destroy relationships. Aquí tenemos unos ejemplos de generalizaciones, esas ideas grandiosas que queremos que los alumnos puedan escribir. Por ejemplo, todas las cosas tienen un origen, el cambio es necesario para sobrevivir, la influencia puede ser positiva o negativa y el poder puede crear o destruir relaciones. So it's not just a matter of learning content, learning details, taking a test. It's, do you have a global understanding of things, right? Are you being inspired? You know, are you getting a chance to research something that you're passionate about? And the beauty of the Kaplan model and the GT icons is that children are encouraged to analyze and apply their learning. It provides a framework for their learning at increased levels of depth and complexity, and it encourages metacognition and connections across disciplines. Okay. El modelo de Kaplan exhorte a sus hijos a analizar y aplicar su aprendizaje, provea una estructura de trabajo para aprender a niveles mayores y exhorte a la metacognición y conexiones en varias disciplinas. This is an example of a differentiated vocabulary activity. We have had some differentiated vocabulary activities in place for several years now, where the children are studying and using Greek and Latin roots, in this case, to create inventions, or what we call Greekimon, which is kind of like a Pokemon, a Greek and Latin spell book, and a phobiaology haiku. And those come from Ian Bird on Birdseed TV or birdseed.com. And you can see the teacher's board here with the icons and the grade level theme of patterns. This is the 4th grade level theme. And then you can see the student composition books here. I know we're working remotely, so these resources look a little bit different, and I'll show you what those look like in a moment. But you can also see the student example here of a Greekimon, where she used the different word parts, mono, cent, mobile, a Greekimon that can do 100 pull-ups in 5 seconds. So you can see the creative thought there that this child is using to create this Greekimon using the word parts. Okay. Este es un ejemplo de una actividad de vocabulario que les da la oportunidad a los niños a usar su creatividad. Y también pueden ver aquí en el salón los iconos y patrones, que es el tema del 4 años. Y aquí están las carpetas de los niños donde hacen sus actividades, diferencias. There is a question in the chat. Are GT kids in a regular classroom or with a classroom that is all GT students? Okay, so the answer to that is usually the students are at least cluster grouped, so they could be within a larger class where not every single student is an identified GT student, but a cluster group of them are. So you could have that. Sometimes campuses have more kids that are identified as GT, so there might be a whole class with all GT students. So it just depends what campus your child is at and how many students are identified in each of those grade levels. Okay. There's a question here. If daughter was tested with a drawing not identified as GT, we do not. We had a drawing test in kinder that we used in years past, but that is a pre-screening tool. It's only a pre-screening tool. We don't use a drawing test to identify GT students. Those students that were recommended with the drawing test could take the actual test that we use, which is the COGAT, and they have to qualify based on those scores, not on the drawing test. This year, since we're working remotely, we did not use the drawing test this year. Okay. And at this time, our referral process has ended and the students have already tested. So the ones who tested already, they're pending results, and those results should be available by May, the beginning of May. Okay, so that is the last question on the chat. This is another example of a differentiated activity. It is a depth and complexity frame with a historical figure. In this case, we have Martin Luther King Jr. And you can notice the icons here. Ethics, what are the ethical implications of segregation? Details, use details to describe one of Martin Luther King's speeches. Origin, which is a content imperative, that's another icon. What conditions and events led to the civil rights movement? And then contribution, what was his contribution what evidence do we have of his legacy that's present today? Okay, and there's a quote here for discussion. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So this might be a social studies activity in middle school. That's, I believe I have it posted in the middle school resources. Este es un ejemplo de una actividad donde los alumnos pueden estudiar a alguien de importancia en historia, en este caso Martin Luther King Jr., y su contribución a sociedad con unas preguntas asociados con los elementos de complejidad. Okay. This slide shows the new digital GT notebooks on Google Slides. So these are resources that we designed that are available for the students. Typically, the teacher will make a copy on Google Classroom for the students. And you can see that there's different tabs. The interest survey, where the teacher's getting information on what the child is interested in, what they're passionate about. And then their grade level theme, their research process, because the teacher gets an idea of what they're interested in so that they have the opportunity to do research and to complete a project. So the steps to the research process, then a product proposal. What product does the student want to create? And products range from anything like an iMovie that they create, like a movie trailer based on their topic, or they create a model. In early childhood, many times they'll create a model with clay or with different materials. They can also create a unique piece of art. And then we have the differentiated activities tab, and then the differentiated vocabulary at the end. So the one on the left is an elementary example, and the one on the right is the middle school example, the 8th grade example, and it has a quote there. Okay, so estas son las fotografías de unas carpetas que tenemos en Google Slides, y las maestras de alumnos dotados y talentosos les hace una copia por medio de Google Classroom para que ellos hagan su trabajo, sus actividades. Okay. We have also a collaboration with Texas A&M University and AgriLife Extension. So some of our campuses are working on lessons with the Learn, Grow, Eat, Go curriculum that's geared toward elementary. So right now we have Arndt Elementary, Colonel Santos, Nye, and San Isidro that have these lessons going on with their students. And they also get to experience cooking demos, live cooking demos, where the agents from AgriLife Extension are using vegetables to prepare healthier versions of meals and things like that. Raúl Perales Middle School collaborated also with AgriLife Extension by putting together these garden buckets. They have the garden buckets in the soil, and they arranged for a drive-through where parents came to pick up the buckets, and the children were growing vegetables at home. So that was also part of their services for gifted and talented. And it is a nice collaboration that we do have with AgriLife Extension. And these are some past photographs of children that planted vegetables in the garden. So you can see the joy that they had in planting, growing, studying, and seeing the entire process, and then actually harvesting and washing and enjoying the vegetables that they grew. So since things are a little bit different this year, that's why we had schools work with the garden buckets and send them home. But in years past, we did have the joy of getting together, and I look forward to that time in the future as well. Aquí tenemos unas fotografías de siembra y cosecha de vegetales, cuando los niños plantaron los vegetales. And here you can see them with the harvest and enjoying what they harvested. Aquí pueden ver a los alumnos con lo que cosecharon y cuando están probando con las maestras. Es una colaboración que tenemos con Texas A&M y AgriLife Extension. Y una de nuestras escuelas también, una de las secundarias, pasaron estos a los alumnos para que los alumnos cosecharan sus vegetales en la casa. So currently, we also have a platform called Project Pals, where we have students doing research and keeping their information on this space. So it's a space where they can post their questions and post the information that they find and then present it for their project. So here we have design a garden. So the students are looking at the different types of plants, and you can see how they included the details icon to correlate that element of depth and complexity that we reviewed. So this is an actual project that's in progress at one of our schools that the students have started presenting, and they're going to continue refining it and working on it to completion. Este es un ejemplo de un proyecto de este año donde los alumnos buscan información sobre los diferentes plantas, y aquí ponen sus preguntas y la información que encuentran y también lo presentan. Y puede ver el icono aquí para detalles. This is another project. This is a second grade project, and we have Noah here showcasing his healthy spaghetti. So you can see some of the guiding questions on the research, and this particular project is called So You Want to Be a Chef. So Noah used the vegetables and spiralized those vegetables to create a healthy spaghetti. And you can notice the depth and complexity prompt here for trends, where he says, people are replacing pasta with vegetable noodles for healthier options, which I think is a great idea, which I do at home as well. And we're very proud of Noah and his work. Okay. Here we have some photographs of past projects. You can see how this relates to the Greek Iman, the vocabulary word parts, and the children created these different creatures and came up with a story and their background and what they are and where they come from and so forth. So very artistic there from Zaffarini. And then you see some additional projects. These are from Washington Middle. There's one here about historical event D-Day. There's one, a biographical study on Helen Keller and Texas climate. Estos son unos proyectos del pasado donde los alumnos crearon diferentes creaciones y estudiaron diferentes temas, por ejemplo, Helen Keller o el clima de Texas y un evento histórico. And then here we have a high school project from our 2019 showcase where the students designed an actual video game. So you can see here it's called Alien Assault, and how they correlated the icons to the different steps in the process and the research behind video game creation. And this was actually an award-winning project. I think it won first place at a competition. So it's always nice to see at the showcase the different levels and the products and performances that our students have created as a result of their program services. Este es un ejemplo de un juego de video de unos alumnos de la preparatoria de United South High School. Y puede ver su producto aquí y se ganó un premio de primer lugar en competencia. This is an older project, but I always like to show it because it's such a great project. This child did research on Frida Kahlo, and she emulated the style of Frida Kahlo in her own artwork. And this artwork was actually displayed at the Laredo Center for the Arts. So we're very proud of our GT students' work, and you can see the research that she did with the information and the icons correlated to the research. Este es un ejemplo de un proyecto del pasado donde el alumno estudió Frida Kahlo y su arte, y ella misma hizo unas obras en el estilo de Frida Kahlo. Okay. Puede ver las preguntas de investigación y la correlación de la investigación con los iconos. This is another project where the child studied Picasso, and she did her own artwork in the style of Picasso, and she also has her research and the patterns, the grade level theme, the connection there. So there she's looking at observable patterns through the eyes of an artist. Este es otro ejemplo de un proyecto donde la niña estudió Picasso y tiene su propio arte en el estilo de Picasso. Here is a project on sea turtles. Many of our elementary students like to research different animals, and I did get to see some student presentations about different animals. And the generalization here, you can see environmental neglect may influence patterns which may result in. And you can see the research correlated to the GT icons and the grade level theme connection to patterns and some products here that the child created. There's a public service announcement, there's a little logo, and there's a book here that they also created. Este es otro proyecto de las caguamas y puede ver los folletos que el alumno tiene aquí de su producto y también la generalización y la búsqueda de información con los iconos. This is another project on the civil rights movement where the generalization is power may be used or abused. You can see the artwork on the trifold and then the books on the side that they created and the correlation of the research to the icons. Este es otro proyecto de un tema de historia y pueden ver el arte y los libros que va con la investigación. So we will be having our upcoming district showcase, and the plan is that it's going to be virtual, and that will be on May 21st. And so each campus has their projects, their campus showcases, and then from there, each campus has a representative that will participate in the district level showcase. And the components that we expect to see are, of course, that generalization with the grade level theme, the icon correlations to research, and then the student product performance and presentation. La próxima exhibición del distrito de estudiantes GT, cada escuela tiene su propio showcase y luego uno de ellos viene al nivel del distrito para enseñar y eso, el plan lo tenemos para tenerlo virtual el 21 de mayo. Y esperemos ver estos componentes que hemos visto en los ejemplos, ¿verdad? La generalización, correlación de los iconos y el producto desempeño con la presentación. These are some extra examples from high school. This was an 11th grade student who did her designs for costumes. This was a theater project. And then you can see the fabric swatches with the costume design. And the student actually placed at the state level in UIL for this costume design, which was her GT project. So you can see the characters from Tartuffe, Madame Purnell, Oregon, and then Tartuffe, the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing with the fabric swatches as well. So we're very proud of the work that our GT students have done. This was an example also of a from UIL competition. It was a marketing strategy for production of Shakespeare's Macbeth, but the students had to come up with a different setting. So this particular student created Macbeth on Mars, I believe. So you can see the artwork and the playbill and the social media campaign for that production of Macbeth. And then a closer look at that. Estos son unas fotografías de proyectos de alumnos de las preparatorias que compitieron en UIL y esta niña sí ganó a nivel estatal con su proyecto. Y también unos diseños de maquillaje. This is hair and makeup designs, which are also part of the UIL competition, estilos de peinados y maquillaje. Y el producto final, here you can see the final product of those hair and makeup designs for their GT project. So in this slide, you see our contact information. You can see my email, Ms. Moore's email, our phone number, our director, Mr. Rosales, and his email. And I'm going to go ahead and address some questions that we have in the chat at this time. Okay, so several people still asking for sign-in. Don't worry, we don't have a sign-in sheet. We will go ahead and gather the information that we have about our participants here, and that will be fine. We can get some information on the back end from our Zoom meeting. And then here, do GT students from different schools in UISD ever get together? They do get together at our district showcase. And since it's a little bit different this year, we probably won't be gathering physically, but it'll be a virtual event. But I actually think that's a really good idea. I think that we could definitely coordinate maybe some more events for them to collaborate, for the children to collaborate from different schools. Will middle school students participate in GT Showcase if they've already presented their GT project? Ms. Godinez, to answer that question, each campus has one representative that will be representing the campus for the district level. So all of the students get to present at their campus, but then the campus has a judging process, and then the top project from each school will actually participate in the district showcase. So the students will receive an invitation for that because we only have one from each campus for the district level. Where can we get this PowerPoint? This PowerPoint is already posted on the Gifted and Talented website. So if you go to uisd.net and you click on departments and you scroll down to GT department, you can see it under GT documents on the right side. It's the 4th document on the right. Okay, and then in what class would students do their project? Okay, so it depends. If you're talking about like secondary and middle school, the campus has an implementation plan where they determine which teacher, which content area is going to work with the students on the project. Our most common in middle school is social studies. They tend to go through social studies. Sometimes they go through the ECAR class in 8th grade, the English College Academic Readiness class. And then sometimes rarely they go through a science class. For elementary, since they have more of an opportunity to work with the different subjects, I see them getting together with the students to work on their projects very often on Fridays. They have it in their schedule where they meet for their project time. Okay, and then is the student notified when he or she will be presenting? If so, when? Yes, the student will be chosen and will receive notification. And the date for our district showcase is Friday, May 21st. So there would be plenty of time. The student would receive notice, I would say definitely sometime in April. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Very good. You're welcome. The project, some projects are on Project Pals, so there's not a physical trifold. But if the student creates a physical trifold, that's okay too. It'll just be shown on camera. So there's different ways of presenting, and the product is usually something tangible, or it could be something electronic, right? It could be a movie or a video or something like that that can be shown. So it's different. Mi hijo acaba de presentar el examen. ¿Cuándo nos darán los resultados? Los vamos a mandar en mayo. Will there be further training for parents at their specific grade levels since each grade level focuses on a different theme? Is that Mr. or Mrs. Santos? You can definitely email me and we can definitely set something up if you have a group of parents that are interested in getting together for a specific grade level. I'm going to put my email address here in the chat, and you can also see it on the screen so that you can email me on that. And then I have, when is the project due? The GT project is due based on the campus timeline. So the campus would be able to tell you, the teacher would be able to tell you when the student projects are due. And then once they find out who is advancing to the district level, then they kind of refine the projects before the district presentation at the end of May on the 21st. You're very welcome. Parents, thank you for joining. I will be here a little bit longer to see if there's anything else on the chat, any questions. We're an email or a phone call away, and we really appreciate your interest and your attendance today. Thank you so much. Miss Moore, did I miss anything in the chat? Miss Moore, do you want to unmute your mic?
Lisa, can you hear me?
I can't hear you. I can hear you here, but not on the.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We did have a question. A parent was asking when is the next time they can take the GT test?
Okay, so the next time for the GT test will be at, next school year. So our timeline when we start accepting referrals will be due by mid-October.
Okay. Also, Ms. Dunn, in what class would a ninth grader do their project?
Okay, so if it's a ninth grader, it's going to depend on the ninth grader schedule, whether he or she is in a magnet program, because our magnet students work on projects through their specialty courses. And then if they're not in the magnet, there's different options, just depending on the campus plan once again. So I would recommend that you talk with your campus administrator about that.
Ms. Dunn, we have another question. Kindergarten students will have to create their first project in the next couple of months?
Yes, kindergarten, they just started their services, and they will be creating a project within the next couple of months. And of course, their research is shorter. There's a few slides on the Google notebook where it guides them through the research process. And we also have a resource called Net Tracker for all ages that filters information kind of by grade level, by reading level, so that it's not like a general Google search. It filters it, for school appropriate and age appropriate content. So that's available as well for the students to use. And then I shared some examples with kinder teachers. There's a task called Do Your Part for Art, similar to the projects I shared, where the students can research an artist and then create their own artwork in that style. Or there's Animal Nation, which is where they research about an animal that they're interested in and they present. And I think one of the students is going to create a little clay model of their animal. Okay.
Ms. Dunn,
Uh-huh.
there's a Spanish question and it
Yes,
says,
I read that.
okay.
La presentación que compartí hoy está en nuestra página de internet de UISD.net en departamento de GT y tiene en inglés y en español. He estado hablando en inglés sobre los proyectos y contestando las preguntas, pero si tiene una pregunta en particular también me lo puede poner en el chat.
Quería hacer una pregunta.
Ok.
Mi hija está en Raúl Perales Middle School y ya hizo su planta, ya la trajimos a casa. Como quiera, tiene que hacer otro proyecto de GT o ese es el proyecto que va a presentar ella.
Y si buscó información sobre la planta y todo eso,
sí,
ese puede ser su proyecto, ¿verdad?
Okay. Sí.
Pero también puede hacer otro. Y yo le sugiero que hable con el maestro o con la señora, el asistente, la señora Mónica Mora.
Ok.
Ella también le puede decir.
Ok, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Nada, muy amable. I have a question here. Is this the same project my second grade daughter is currently working on? More than likely, I think that would be her GT project. Thank you, Ms. Rios. I tried with the Spanish translation. Net Tracker has not allowed some students in. Okay, Mr. Montemayor, I'm glad to see you here. Go ahead and send me an email so that I can reach out to the person that provides support with Net Tracker. We did have a couple of issues, but they were able to troubleshoot and teachers and students were able to get in. So I'm confident that we'll be able to help you with that.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. How's it going with your students?
Fine when they get a chance to show up because our schedules are all over the place. Thanks to work, but we're still moving ahead. So
yes, you all do an amazing job. I know the schedule is a little condensed, but thank you so much.
no problem.
Their teachers will let them know when to start. Yes.
Miss. Disculpe, tengo una duda.
Okay.
Mi niña es de kinder. ¿Qué es lo que procede con ella?
Los alumnos de kinder ahorita están empezando a recibir el servicio de sus maestros y van a completar la primer parte de la carpeta que está por medio de Google Slide, donde ellos comparten información de sus intereses.
Okay.
Puede hablar con la maestra para comunicarse a ver qué tiene, ¿verdad? En este momento ahorita por lo pronto la mayoría de ellos acaban de empezar, entonces ellos están empezando a llenar esas formas de interés. Y luego un poquito más adelante va a empezar a buscar información sobre el tema que le interesa para hacer su proyecto. Y también los maestros están introduciendo los iconos para que ellos aprenden más profundo.
Ok, mi niña de cuarto, ella hizo también el examen de GT como 1 mes y medio, 2 meses después que mi niña de kinder. ¿Cuándo tendremos como resultados de ella?
Los resultados se les comparte en el mes de mayo.
Ok. Ok, muchas gracias.
De nada.
Ms. Dunn,
Yes.
you were about to answer, their teachers will let them know when to start, correct?
Yes, the teachers, most students should already be working on their GT project. They should be in progress. Unless it's a kinder student, they're just getting started with the interest survey where they're going to be filling out those slides, or they're going to be documenting in their little journal what their interests are to kind of start exploring those interests when it comes to the research. And the teachers are also introducing the elements of depth and complexity with their assignments right now, if you're talking about a kinder student. But the other grade levels of students that have already been identified, their projects have been well underway. So I would recommend that you communicate with your child's teacher.
Disculpe, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Una pregunta. Mi niña está en 5º grado, ella está en GT, pero tengo otra de kinder. La maestra me debió de haber dicho si ella podría presentar el examen o qué puedo hacer.
Entonces no presentó el examen, el de kinder.
No, pues realmente no sabía que ya
Okay.
iba a ser el examen porque pues, no nos avisaron.
Ok, tenemos anuncios en el periódico que salen en inglés y en español, pero si este año no pudo, lo puede recomendar el año que entra. Le avisa a la consejera que quiere que su niño tome el examen para el programa de GT y tiene que ser antes del medio de octubre, ¿ok? Para que él o ella tome el examen, a ver si califica para recibir servicio el otro año escolar, porque el examen y el procedimiento se tarda 1 año y el alumno recibe los servicios el próximo año. Por ejemplo, va a estar en primer año, ¿verdad? Entonces toma el examen y pasa el proceso y si califica va a recibir el servicio en segundo año.
Ok, entonces de kinder empieza siempre a mediados de octubre.
Sí, no, de todos los niveles.
Todos los niveles a mediados de octubre, pero puedo hablar con la
consejera.
Consejera. Ok,
Y
muchísimas
usted,
gracias.
de nada, le va a pedir permiso, firmar para que su niño tome el examen y también le va a pedir una carta de anotaciones donde usted escribe ejemplos de comportamientos asociados con las características de dotados y talentosos. Y que sea antes del medio de octubre.
Ok.
Con más o
Muchísimas
menos
gracias. Ok.
Ok.
Disculpe, yo también tengo una pregunta.
Ok.
Mi niño está en kinder, presentó ya el examen, ya firmamos porque me mandó la consejera donde él era elegible para tomar lo de GT el próximo año. Hasta entonces empiezan los proyectos, ahorita él nada más estaba en el proceso.
Bueno, disculpe, ¿me dijo que es en el kinder?
Sí, está en kinder, ya, ya presentó el examen,
Y ya
ya firmé
calificó.
la hoja. Sí, ya me dijeron que era elegible y ya firmé la autorización para que tomara las clases.
Muy bien.
Pero como es mi primer niño, no sé cómo se maneja nada de esto.
Sí.
Y también, si no sabía, hasta ahorita que vi una pregunta, si toman clases normales con sus mismos compañeros o cómo se maneja en kinder. O sea, que sería para usarlo en primer año, ¿verdad?
Bueno, pues los del kinder, ellos sí reciben el servicio inmediatamente. Ese es requisito del Estado. Cuando ellos son elegibles en el kinder, empiezan con el servicio. Ya empezaron, muy recientemente empezaron los maestros a darles el servicio, ¿verdad? Para compartir su informe de los intereses y enseñándole los iconos. Acaban de empezar con el servicio, pero todos los maestros en nuestro distrito tienen entrenamiento para darles los servicios a alumnos dotados y talentosos. Entonces, no hay que moverlos a otra clase porque todos los maestros tienen el entrenamiento y le pueden proveer el servicio.
Entonces, igual ya para el próximo año, bueno, yo pensaba que iba a ser hasta el próximo año cuando iba a empezar él con el programa, no sabía que ya estaba llevándolo a cabo, incluso les pidieron, pero
sí,
yo creo que era en general.
En el kinder es el único, ¿verdad? Es un poquito diferente para kinder, pero todos los demás toman el examen y pasan por el proceso y reciben el servicio el año que entra.
Ah, bueno,
Okay.
Gracias.
De nada. Okay, I have a question here in the chat for high school. High school projects will depend on the student schedule. So I would recommend getting in touch with the campus administration to see which administrator is in charge of GT services at the high school campus, because each campus has an implementation plan. And I mentioned that if it's a magnet student, the magnet students work on projects through their specialty courses, depending on which magnet they're in. Okay.
I think this is all for now, Ms. Dunn.
Okay.
More questions.
All right. Thank you so much for, yes.
Sorry, I just have one more question. In order for you, if your kid is already in the GT program, are they presenting each year a test to qualify for the next year? Or once they're already in the program, they no longer need to?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Here at UISD, we don't reassess our students. So they just take the GT test one time. And once they're identified, they do retain that label. But we do administer inventories to our teachers during the transition year. So in 5th grade, the teachers fill out an inventory, to see how the student is doing and where their strengths lie as far as the different content areas before going into 6th grade. And then there's an 8th grade inventory where the teachers fill out and give feedback as to how the student is doing in the program before their transition to high school in 9th grade.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the slides are on www.uisd.net, and you click on departments and scroll down to the GT department. That's where you can find the presentation that was shared today. That was the last question in the chat. Thank you so much for your time and for your attendance. You all have a great evening and a great week. And remember that we're an email or a phone call away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Blessings to all of you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you, likewise.
Bye.
Bye-bye.